The day started like any other me, sitting at my desk in the middle of a mid-sized marketing office, half listening to a podcast while pretending to write copy. Then the phone rang, slicing through the background hum of keyboards and low chatter. Answering it was just part of the job, so I grabbed the receiver, expecting some quick question about a campaign deadline or an invoice snafu. But what I got was something entirely different. Hello? This is Emily from Accounts Payable. The microwave just flashed some weird error code, and now the whole floor's lights flickered. What do we do? The voice on the other end practically panicked. Microwave? Lights flickering? I glanced up. The office kitchen was about 20 feet behind my cubicle, and sure enough, a faint buzzing hum came from that direction. Somehow, the coffee machine's rhythmic gurgle was gone. Everyone else was ignoring this call of distress, and frankly, so was IT. Why was I suddenly the go-to person when even the IT department, the people supposedly trained to untangle tech emergencies, ignored the cries for help? I mean, Mark, our IT guy, was about as visible as a ghost, popping in only when the printer jammed or the Wi-Fi went down, though that was rare enough to make those moments legendary. Linda, our office manager, hovered nearby with a face full of worry, clutching her clipboard like it was a lifeline. Jamie, my closest coworker and the office's unofficial tech whiz, despite being scatterbrained enough to misplace their own laptop weekly, was flitting around in a half-panic, half-curious mode. She was already peeking inside the microwave with an intensity normally reserved for forensic investigations. Meanwhile, I was just a marketing assistant who couldn't tell a hard drive from a coffee drive. But there I was, receiver in hand and microwave crisis unfolding, wondering how on earth I became the office's accidental tech support. At that moment, the phone call spiraled. Now the security system is offline and no one's getting emails. Lemons to lemonade, or so I hoped. This was beginning to look like the kind of disaster movie you don't sign up for, except the popcorn was missing and the stakes were real. The stark contrast between my job description and this rapidly escalating situation wasn't lost on me. I scribbled down the ghostly error code the microwave flashed, F42 or something like that, while in the background the lights continued to flicker. Janie was already trying to Google the error but got distracted by a YouTube cat video. Linda was nervously pacing, muttering something about deadlines that now felt like they were being eaten alive by this silent tech chaos. And Mark? He was nowhere to be found. So here I stood, caught right in the eye of a very digital storm, wondering if my tenure at this office would be remembered more for marketing brilliance or for accidentally unleashing a minor electrical apocalypse. I didn't volunteer for any of this. Heck, my biggest tech challenge before today had been figuring out how to reset the office coffee machine after someone left decaf in the grounds. But fate, with a wicked sense of humor, had other plans. I've never been what you'd call tech literate. My comfort zone was always crafting catchy slogans and scheduling social media posts, not deciphering cryptic error codes or calming an office drowning in digital chaos. Yet there I was, clutching the receiver like a lifeline and staring down a challenge I hadn't signed up for. Our office was one of those places where the tech setup could easily pass as a Frankenstein experiment. Multiple networks tangled up with more passwords than anyone actually remembered, devices from every decade. Some still running software that looked like it belonged in a museum, and gadgets that seemed to obey their own minds rather than the people paying their salaries. And the IT guy? Mark was as elusive as Bigfoot. You'd hear ghost stories about his brief appearances, once a month at best, usually popping out of a mysterious basement cave to fix the Wi-Fi or confiscate someone's illegally downloaded movie. Otherwise, he was an urban legend, his responses often filtered through email or cryptic sticky notes left on computer monitors. This setup meant that when something went wrong, most of us tried to steer clear. The phrase, "don't touch anything, call Mark," was practically sacrosanct. So why, in the middle of a full-blown tech meltdown involving a rebellious microwave, flickering lights, and disappearing emails, was I suddenly the only one answering the call? Jamie certainly didn't help calm things down. Bless her heart, she was the resident helpful tech enthusiast, full of enthusiasm but utterly hopeless at following through. I watched her poke and prod the microwave like it was a bomb about to explode, mumbling, "If I just reverse the polarity of the power coil?" Which begged the question of where exactly she learned that nonsense. Somewhere between frantic Googling and random YouTube tutorials followed by, inevitably, a distracting cat video. At one point, she even suggested unplugging the fridge, only to forget and return with a carton of milk just as it started to warm up. Linda, on the other hand, was spiraling into a full panic. She hustled around the office with frantic energy, clipboard gripped like an anchor in a storm. Her voice kept rising in pitch every time she muttered about deadlines and clients breathing down our necks. Watching her pace became a weird kind of entertainment, equal parts sympathetic and absurd. One minute she was talking about quarterly reports, the next she was begging anyone to, just get this fixed before the big presentation. I caught her furtively glancing at the clock. her usual calm demeanor shredded by the impending disaster. Meanwhile, all the little emergency emails from our coworkers popped up on my screen. Messages flew around like digital carrier pigeons. Is IT looking at this? Can someone fix the network? I can't send anything, the chat's down. Not a single one addressed to Mark. I glanced at my inbox, half expecting a reply from him, but nothing. Nada. The office's supposed tech savior had vanished into the ether. In reality, the whole chaos was beginning to settle around me like a storm cloud I couldn't escape. The microwave's error code, F42, glowed ominously. Googling combinations of the error and office microwave didn't help. All I got were forum posts from disgruntled home cooks dealing with expired warranty issues. Nothing about how a defunct microwave could darken an entire office floor or crash an email server. Trying to troubleshoot something I barely understood was like attempting brain surgery with a butter knife. I poked around the power socket, remembering a vague memory of Jamie mentioning something about tripped breakers earlier in the week. Flipping the switch on the nearby electrical panel sent a jolt of anticipation through me. The lights steadied for a moment, a glimmer of hope until the whole office plunged into darkness. Great, I muttered under my breath. Jamie shot me a look somewhere between horror and excitement, as if I'd just accidentally pulled the pin on a tech grenade. Then came Mark's voice, dripping with sarcasm, wafting in from the break room. Apparently, he had returned just in time to witness the ongoing catastrophe. Wow, impressive. You just managed to reboot the entire network. And here I thought I was the IT disaster around here. His smirk was audible, and while I wanted to punch him, it was hard not to laugh. The email servers crashed, internal messaging died, and suddenly, no one could reach each other. Not even Linda, whose spiral worsened because now she couldn't email the higher-ups. The clock was ticking, the boss's arrival in 15 minutes hanging in the air like a guillotine. I was out of my depth, totally out of it. But something snapped. Maybe it was desperation or adrenaline, or maybe sheer stubbornness. But I sat down and started clicking through system menus Jamie had briefly shown me a week ago. I tried to recall some advice, anything. Reboot here, reset there, hold down this button while muttering magic words. Half the time it felt like hacking into NASA's launch sequence rather than fixing a microwave-linked power outage. Linda hovered anxiously, Jamie offered more helpful suggestions, and Mark, somehow standing behind me and leaning casually against the cubicle wall, muttered, "You do realize you're just guessing, right?" "Thanks for the confidence boost," I shot back, feeling my panic transform slowly into determination. This mess wasn't going to fix itself. If nobody else was going to jump in, I would have to figure it out on the fly. No guidebook, just trial, error, and stubborn grit. Somewhere in between clicking buttons and muttering to myself, a tiny glimmer of control started to reappear. The lights stopped flickering, for now. Emails tentatively began to trickle back in. The kitchen, ominous error code aside, seemed to settle down. It wasn't perfect, far from it. And the disaster clearly wasn't over. Whatever caused the outage was a tangled mess of electronics and bad luck. But for the first time since the microwave meltdown began, I wasn't just a bystander anymore. I was part of the solution. Though honestly, I wondered if this newfound tech fame would come with some sort of unwanted nickname or, worse, an invite to the next office help desk duty rotation. I had never worked harder in my life to avoid becoming the resident tech support. But fate had other plans. I decided to dive in headfirst, despite knowing nothing about microwaves that were connected to office power grids or whatever was going on with the security system. My first move was an impressive display of confusion. I stared at the blinking F42 error like it was a secret code carved into the ruins of some ancient civilization. Jamie hovered nearby, her eyes wide but unfocused. "Maybe if we just unplug it and plug it back in?" she suggested with all the conviction of someone who once fixed a toaster by hitting it. I nodded, desperate enough to try anything. I yanked the microwave's plug loose from the wall, and for a brief moment, the humming stopped. Silence. Peace. Then, without warning, the entire floor's lights flickered violently before everything went pitch black. Linda let out a shriek somewhere off to the side that sounded like a mix between alarm and sheer existential dread. Jamie grabbed my arm, whispering, "You've doomed us." From somewhere nearby came Mark's unmistakable voice, dripping with disbelief and just a hint of amusement. "Well, look who just brought down the whole building." That's a new level of office sabotage. Straightening up, I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my stomach. Blackouts weren't exactly part of my job description, but here I was, trapped in a growing tech nightmare with no manual and no IT hero in sight. Using my phone's flashlight to guide me, I stumbled toward the electrical panel Jamie had mentioned earlier. I didn't really know what I was doing, but flipping breakers was about as cutting edge as my tech skills got. I fingered the switches until one clicked back into place, and the overhead lights grudgingly buzzed back to life. This didn't restore the whole system, though. The office sat in a dysfunctional half-life. The coffee machine remained silent like it was on strike, the microwave's error code was still flashing stubbornly, and the computers groaned under the weight of dead email systems and offline chat apps. Jamie, ever the optimist despite her scatterbrain tendencies, was frantically thumbing through her phone. "Maybe if you hit the reset on the router directly?" she tweeted breathlessly. "Or unplug the fridge so the power isn't overloaded?" "Unplugging the fridge?" I repeated, eyebrows raised. She nodded, already halfway toward the kitchen. 20 minutes later, she returned with a warming carton of milk and a hopeful smile that screamed, "Well, at least the milk didn't get colder." Linda was now pacing in tight little circles, clutching her clipboard like it was the last lifeboat on a sinking ship. "Clients, deadlines, the pitch, this couldn't come at a worse time," she repeated, voice rising to borderline hysteria. Meanwhile, Mark had taken a seat at the corner desk, his hands folded smugly like he was watching an elaborate experiment in disaster unfold. "You know, when you mess up the network this badly, it takes actual IT guys hours to fix it," he drawled. "You're either a genius or completely insane." My cheeks flushed, a cocktail of embarrassment and determination bubbling inside me. Mark could smirk all he wanted, but with 15 minutes until the boss's arrival, I wasn't about to give up. I sat back down, pulled up the control panel Jamie had pointed out last week during one of her tech crash courses. By which I mean 10 hurried minutes of her trying to explain routers while accidentally opening a dozen tabs of memes. Ooh, and started clicking. Menus I didn't understand sprawled across the screen. I hovered over the reset network option, doubting my sanity, but figured it was worth a shot. My finger hovered, then clicked. Screens blinked, systems whirred. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, like a car sputtering to life after weeks, my inbox chimed. An email trickled in. Another. The chat icon lit up for a split second before flickering. Linda's pacing stopped. She stared at the screen, eyes wide. Jamie jumped up. Even Mark seemed mildly impressed, if only because he stopped making snarky remarks for a moment. "We might be onto something," I muttered, more to myself than anyone else. But just as relief began to spread through the room, the microwave let out a plaintive beep and the error code changed to something new and totally inscrutable. The security system's offline indicator blinked back on, and a sudden low hum drifted through the air like an impending thunderstorm. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Yet somehow I was no longer paralyzed by panic. Somewhere beneath the chaos and confusion, I'd found a kernel of confidence. I wasn't the expert, not by any stretch, but I was a fighter. A determined non-techie knee-deep in an accidental tech crisis, refusing to let this mess crush the day. And if Mark was watching, he better take notes because this accidental tech support was just getting started. After what felt like an eternity spent wrestling with blinking error codes, terrified coworkers, and my own rapidly thinning patience, I finally stumbled on the digital equivalent of a magic reset button. Somewhere deep in the labyrinth of system settings, a place I swear looked like it was designed by a sadistic game developer, I found an option simply labeled Factory Reset. It was bold, ominous, and a tiny bit terrifying, but desperation had become my closest companion. I hit it. The office held its collective breath. The microwave went dark for a split second before whirring back to life without any sinister error code. The flickering lights steadied, the coffee machine coughed and sputtered back into action, and my inbox exploded with the emails that had been bottlenecked through whatever apocalypse we'd accidentally unleashed. Even the security system blinked back online, silent and alert. The impossible was suddenly possible. Linda practically hugged me, her worried eyes turning gleeful with relief. Jamie bounced on the balls of her feet, grinning like she'd just won a mini-lottery, and even Mark, our elusive and sarcastic IT ghost, gave me a slow, approving nod. It wasn't quite a standing ovation, but coming from him it was as close as I was going to get. "You actually did it," Jamie said, throwing an arm around my shoulder. "I mean, don't get used to it or anything. You're not officially IT now or anything, but maybe a little unofficial." "Unofficial tech support," I muttered, half laughing as I imagined myself trapped in an endless cycle of microwave meltdowns and power surges. "Great nickname, just what I always wanted." Mark snorted. "Don't worry, Emily, you can keep your day job. If this ever happens again, I'm just gonna bring popcorn." Despite the chaos settling down, the office was buzzing with a new kind of energy. Folks who had previously avoided the tech mess now regarded me with a strange mixture of respect and curiosity. A few coworkers even stopped by to ask about the mysterious F42 error, though I had to admit I still had no idea what it really meant. Somewhere between the panic and the triumph, I'd learned a surprising amount on the fly, enough to hold the line, if not win the battle. That day, I realized two things mostly. First, sometimes life throws the weirdest, scariest challenges at you, like a rebellious microwave somehow taking down an entire office's digital heartbeat, and you just have to claw your way through them. And second, Despite all my tech anxiety, I apparently had a stubborn streak long enough and tough enough to patch up a system meltdown, or at the very least prevent it from becoming a full-on apocalypse. Not that I'm signing up to be the office tech support anytime soon, mind you. I've learned my lesson there. Let's just say I now know exactly how to dodge any awkward, "Hey, can you fix my computer?" emails and maintain a very firm, very polite policy of, "That's IT's problem." Because while I'm proud of my accidental tech hero moment, I'm equally serious about never volunteering for a repeat performance. Still, whenever the microwave buzzes a little too eagerly or the lights flicker for just a second longer than normal, I catch everyone's eyes, just for a moment, and smile quietly to myself. Because in the chaos, I found a weird kind of calm, and that feels like a win, even if it comes with a nickname I never asked for.